welcome back to my channel. My name is Tiffany and we're here today for a special cook with me video. You guys requested a cook with me on my mother-in-law's absolutely delicious cheesecake, so we're gonna do that today. I'm gonna show you how to fancy it up a little bit for your Christmas dinner. So without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and welcome in my special guest today. I've got my daughter Michaela as well as my mother-in-law Marianne. They're gonna join me today and we are going to make this delicious cheesecake. Yay! Okay, so our recipe today for cheesecake does require a spring cake pan. So this is something that you may not have in your house normally. It's definitely not something that I had when I first started cooking. So you can find these on Amazon. I actually did pick up this larger one on Amazon. I have 3 smaller ones. However, when we made the recipe last, we ended up having to put it into 2 because it wasn't large enough to fit the whole recipe. So I did end up purchasing a larger one. The whole purpose of a spring pan is that it opens, whoop, and the top will come off, the top of the cake pan. Maybe. And you'll have, normally it doesn't happen like that. Have it sitting on the counter when you do it, but then you just have your cake like this, and that'll allow for you to either put this on a tray or you can use just this, and you'll have that nice outside of the cake. That's what gives you the nice outside of the cake. So definitely have to have a spring pan in order to do this recipe. To get us started today, we are going to start by making the crust. Now, Mom, you were saying that this recipe didn't originally call for a crust, right?
Correct, yeah. But my pan had a leak, so I improvised and made a crust.
Kind of reminds me of like the meatloaf story. Have you guys ever heard the meatloaf story where the woman would always say that she would cut the end of her meatloaf off? And then it happened like, well, why did you do that? Oh, my mom did it. And why do you do it? Well, my mom did it. And then it turned out that the only reason that like the great-great-great-grandma did it was because it didn't fit in her loaf pan. So it didn't like serve any purpose, it just didn't fit in her loaf pan. So sometimes we don't know why we do things, but now we know.
It works, and it's better with the crust.
She started making the crust because her pan was leaking, but now we like it with the crust.
Yeah, it's better with the crust.
So how many graham crackers do we need?
It doesn't specify.
It doesn't specify.
It's like a cup.
Yeah, it's like a cup.
1/2 cup of graham crackers.
Like after they're already crunched up?
Yes.
Yes. So Mom, you said you usually use approximately a package?
Yeah, it's 1.5 cups.
1.5 cups.
Did I say a 1/2 cup?
You think you said a 1/2 cup.
Yeah.
So we're just gonna put the whole cracker sheet into the blender here. We're gonna put all of these in here and we're going to pray for the best. It also calls for melted butter. How much melted butter, Michaela?
6 tablespoons.
6 tablespoons, which is not a full stick, we just discovered. Although, it could be. We like butter in this house.
Do you like butter?
Yep.
My best suggestion when you're melting butter is to cut it into thirds so that it just melts a little bit quicker. We're gonna put it into a little cup here. We'll pour this into our blender and we'll get that mixed up. And I think that's all, right, for the crust?
I believe so. It's been a while
more
since
thing?
I've made it.
Nope, there's a 1/3 cup of sugar and a 1/2 tablespoon of cinnamon.
Oh, a little seasoning. Perfect. To get started, we're going to go ahead and melt our butter. This is going to just help everything come together much smoother and give us a nice easy crust to put together. So go ahead and cut up your butter, get it into a microwave safe dish. I'm using this porcelain measuring cup. I got these at Hobby Lobby. Go ahead and pop those into the microwave. I think we did about 40 seconds. Give it a good stir so that it's ready to go. Go ahead and add your graham crackers into your blender or your food processor. I don't currently own a food processor. The one that I had broke, so we're going to use my blender. I did just recently pick this up from the Beautiful line at Walmart. It was very affordable. It was around $40 and it works nicely. It's not, the highest end, but it definitely works nicely. Go ahead and add in your sugar, and then you're also going to pulse this until it's completely combined. We also added in some cinnamon, and then you're going to add in your melted butter. Now you can make your crust however you like. Like my mother-in-law said, she This recipe does call for no crust, so you can just do the cheesecake as is with no crust, or do a crust that you prefer. You can even buy a ready-made crust if that's what you prefer. Go ahead and pulse your graham crackers with your melted butter until everything is combined. It's going to be crumbly, and you're going to ask yourself how this is ever going to come together into a crust, but I promise that it does. I'm just using this rubber spatula to kind of push down the sides just like you would if you were making a cookie or something, just to make sure that all of the ingredients get combined, and just pulse this until it gets a little bit crumbly. You'll know it's ready to go when it starts to come together in little graham cracker clusters, and that means it's ready to go. Grab your spring pan and make sure that you give it a good spray with some cooking spray, or rub it down with butter. You can even flour this if you prefer. This is how we like it. We just spray it with a little Pam that gives it enough, and dump in your crumbs, and then follow Michaela's lead and just push everything down until it's nice and together. You don't want to go up the sides. This crust is just meant to go across the bottom and slightly up the edge, just a tad, so that everything stays on the crust. Once it's down pat, you're ready to go. Okay, so if you are used to making pie crusts for other pies, using graham cracker or like a tart crust or anything like that, sometimes you have to pre-bake your pie crust. You're not going to do that for this recipe, so just go ahead and let that sit to the side. Please ooh and ah over Michaela's fantastic job of smoothing out the crust. It's looking fantastic. Okay, so when you're working on the wet ingredients for this cake, you're going to do majority of them in the blender. I'm looking to my mother-in-law for reassurance. So we're gonna go ahead. Why don't you grab us a small spatula, and
now what I do is I put in, where's the cream cheese?
The cream cheese is over here.
So I take a half a cream cheese, put in some of the, I mix them up. I put in cream cheese, cottage cheese, sour cream, and an egg. And then I repeat it so it mixes that way. Got it?
Yeah, it mixes easier.
Okay.
Yeah, and it mixes together a lot quicker.
So we have to do it what, 4 times?
Do we need 16 ounces of cream cheese, so both stick?
Yeah,
or both
everything is
cubes?
16 ounces, easy to remember.
Okay.
Except
All
for
right.
like the sugars and stuff.
Well, let's not get technical. The cheeses. How's
There
that?
we go.
There
The
we go.
cheeses. Now, as my mother-in-law said, you're going to add your ingredients in a little bit at a time so everything gets combined. The recipe calls for 16 ounces of cream cheese, 16 ounces of small curd cottage cheese. I like full fat. 16 ounces of heavy cream, and 16 ounces of sour cream. You'll also need 4 eggs, 1 stick of butter melted, 1 tablespoon of vanilla. However, for our recipe, we do 3/4 of a teaspoon or tablespoon of vanilla and 1/4 of a tablespoon of almond extract. We like that extra little almond flavor. You'll also need 3 tablespoons flour, 3 tablespoons cornstarch, and 1.5 cups of sugar. You're going to alternate blending your wet ingredients, so all of your cheeses, your sour cream, and your heavy cream, as well as your eggs. Get those fully combined. You can also add in your sugar. Sugar is actually considered a wet ingredient if you didn't know that, because it does dissolve into your wet ingredients. So go ahead and add that in there as well. And then, as you'll see here throughout all of this blending, I just keep emptying out the blender into our mixing bowl. That way I don't overdo my blender. You don't want to overfill it, or else things don't get a good mix. So once you have all of your wet ingredients combined, just get all of that into a mixing bowl, and then have a second mixing bowl ready to go to do your dry ingredients. as I mentioned, your dry ingredients are flour and cornstarch. Michaela did do the sugar separately today. This is how she makes it. We decided to follow her lead because the one that she made all by herself for Thanksgiving was incredible. So she's adding in 1.5 cups of sugar into the bottom of this bowl. Next up, 3 tablespoons of cornstarch. Now it's important that you make sure that your tablespoons are not overflowing. So scrape the top like Michaela's doing here so that you don't have extra. If you do have an overflowing tablespoon, you might end up with 4 tablespoons, and that can completely change the consistency of your cake. So make sure you don't overdo it. Same goes for your flour. You need 3 tablespoons of flour, and make sure that they are not overflowing. You don't want this cake to be too floury. It's meant to be a creamy custard-like cake, so don't overdo it. Go ahead and use a whisk to mix all of your dry ingredients together. And now we're going to add in the rest of our wet ingredients before we blend everything together. We're just adding in our flavoring. If you're not an almond flavor fan, you don't have to do this part. You can just do 1 full tablespoon of vanilla, and that is equally as delicious. We just like a little bit of almond extract with ours. Now it's time to combine your wet and your dry ingredients. So you're going to start by adding about 1/4 to 1/3 of your batter. Don't put them all in at once. If you do, it'll just be too hard to combine. So put in about 1/4 to 1/3 of your batter. Go ahead and stir that until it's mostly combined. Add in a little bit more and keep the process going until all of your wet ingredients are combined with your dry ingredients. Okay, so when you're making your cheesecake batter, one thing I want to just point out is that it's going to be very, very liquidy. That is completely appropriate. It's going to look like it's kind of like a really thin pancake batter, kind of bubbly, and that's perfectly appropriate. And this is ready to go inside of our spring pan. When using a spring pan, it's wise to put this on top of something else like a baking sheet, just in case there's a leak in your spring pan, like my mother-in-law mentioned. Go ahead and get that into the oven. We're going to bake our cake for 1 hour at 350 degrees. Check it at 1 hour. It may need a couple more minutes. And then you're going to turn off your oven and let it sit for another 2 hours to finish baking. Make sure you don't open your oven. You don't want to let out that heat. Once your 3 hours have passed, you are ready to go. Take your cake out of the oven and it should look just like this. Should have some nice golden edges as well as some beautiful cracks down the center. You'll want to chill your cake at least overnight so that it gets nice and chilled all the way through. This will also help any jiggly parts to fully set. The next day, you'll be able to open your spring pan and you'll have a perfectly ready to eat cake. Okay, my friends, so it is the next day. I'm actually in the middle of filming for Wednesday's video, which you will already have seen by the time you see this video, but our cheesecake is done. It baked for the 1 hour, sat in the oven for the 2 that it needed, then I put it in the refrigerator for overnight. So now it is completely ready to be devoured. Look at this delicious cheesecake. This is what you want. You want a little bit of that crack down the center on the top. That's just a good sign that it's fully baked. Now we are going to decorate this up for Christmas. Now, just know that if you are, you know, a true cheesecake enthusiast, you like it just the way it is, that's perfectly fine. That's how I like it too. But there are lots of things you can put on the top. You can put, you know, like a cherry glaze. You can put fresh strawberries. You can make a banana cream that you can put across the top. But today we're just gonna be using some cranberries, and we're also going to be using some rosemary. Now these we're not going to actually be eating. We're just going to decorate our cake with them, and then they'll pop off when it's time to eat. And we're also going to use a little bit of white chocolate chips for some decor. So let's go ahead and get this decorated. Okay, my friends, my cheesecake is done and it looks absolutely beautiful. This is the perfect dessert for any Christmas holiday, any holiday really, honestly any occasion. But the way that we decorated it today is so incredibly simple, fast, affordable, and will look very elegant no matter where you bring it. I just want to say a huge thank you for joining me in today's very special Cook With Me video. I hope that you had as much fun as we did. Definitely give this recipe a try. It is to die for, and it will become your new favorite cheesecake recipe. If you do try this recipe, I would love for you to tag me on Instagram. I'd love to see how it turns out. Follow me at Charlotte Grove Farmhouse, and I will see you guys in the next one. Happy eating.